morning. I've got, as you can see, a seriously distinguished panel here to discuss destination cities, great cultural centres, and the challenges facing them in the 21st century. According to the United Nations World Tourist Organization, there were 1.3 billion international arrivals last year, and that generated 1.4 trillion in tourist receipts. This year, the figures look as though they could be about 20% higher, which will bring the international tourist industry right back up to pre-pandemic levels. That's a lot of tourism, that's a lot of money, and it's a hell of a lot of CO2. Certain famous natural and historical sites suffer from the phenomenon we now call overtourism. Venice, which attracts between 20 and 30 million visitors a year, and has a permanent population of about 50,000, is probably the most famously overvisited of them all. In September, UNESCO decided not to add Venice to its list of endangered World Heritage Sites, despite the pressures being put on the city by overtourism and rising sea levels. Let me start with you, Toto. Why was avoiding that UNESCO endangered status so important for you?
Well, as you know, UNESCO, it's a branch of United Nations, so when UNESCO Central Office says something about World Heritage, of course, every media, newspaper, magazine, TV talk about it. So I think it's always very good to do this kind of pressures, especially to local politicians, Italian. You know, the Italian, they are very scared, we are very scared about when the foreigners talk about us. So it was a good way to make our administration take some position and think about it.
Okay. The decision to ban cruise ships and to introduce a €5 charge per day seems to have helped sway UNESCO. Now, the introduction of a charge to visit a city is something new and obviously something that could be viewed as controversial. Take us through the decision-making of that.
Well, about cruise ships, it's not about the number of people because the incidence of the tourists that used it before the cruise ships was just 10% of the total of the 25 million that we have. So it was not a big issue about how many they arrived by cruise ship, but the problem was a possible accident of the cruise ship. Yeah. So people come to Venice to visit Venice. Why you want to kill Venice with an accident of a cruise ship? You know,
because there was one small collision, wasn't there?
Well, thank God in the right place of the city where it's something like done in cements, but the rest of the city is wooden beams and bricks. So it's like to have a big cake and a knife, and so the city could disappear in 1 second. So thank God they are not coming anymore.
Okay. Now the entrance fee.
The entrance, I'm not happy about it. First of all, I don't like the word exclusive or exclusivity or all these kind of things that talk about exclude something. So I think that everybody in the world have the right to see Venice and to come and have this amazing experience. It's one of my dreams to arrive to Venice for the first time, but I was born here, so I will never have that kind of dream. So I really believe that everybody has the chance to see Venice and be in Venice. The only things we need, not a €5 tax that, by the way, doesn't limit the number. The problem is the number of people. It's not about the €5. So the only way is to make, finally change the perception that the word museum is not a negative word. I mean, museum is a beautiful place. It's an alive place. It's a place that you inspire yourself. And it's a place where you have the toilet also. And it's a place where everything is arranged and run well. So why not think about Venice as an open museum with people inside? It's a different concept of museum. And in a museum like the Louvre, if you don't have the reservation, you don't go in. Sure. So I prefer not paying, but make a reservation. Let's start to make the group with reservation.
And can I ask though, it's very early days, relatively early days, but has it had an effect on over-tourism? Has it quelled the numbers a little bit? Or?
Well, the mayor says something, but who knows if it's true or not. So. I mean, also because there is no control of the payment, so how you can say that? Okay. So I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. And the final specific question about Venice, a lot of people will be wondering this. Has the Meuse sea barrier saved Venice?
Well, it was very controversial for many reasons. I mean, like more than 30 years of construction and a lot of money that disappear and a lot of people end up in jail or whatever. But
hey, we're in Italy.
Unfortunately, it's true. But even if it's nowadays, I mean, it's already like 4 years that it's working, and it's already an old project because the project was done 3 decades ago. But in the end, I have to say that for now it works. I mean, it works.
Okay, great. Well, we might return to this. Now, Hermann, what about Berlin? Can we apply the term overtourism to Berlin? Is that an issue there? And if it is an issue, how does it relate to the more generally discussed issue of gentrification in Berlin?
Well, frankly speaking, overtourism is not a topic in Berlin. I mean, the city is so huge. From the western fringes to the eastern one is 100 kilometers. And the population is not so big, not far below 4 million. And the tourists we have, last year there have been 12 million, so 80% of pre-pandemic numbers. So compared to Venice, a tiny small city, I think not even 50,000 inhabitants and 30 millions of tourists. I think these numbers show already that overtourism is not a problem in Berlin. Of course, we have gentrification. We have the center of Berlin, the Museum Island, the Humboldt Forum, long discussions. Also, we just talked and yesterday and just heard about it, healing culture. The basic idea was healing the wounds of the difficult German history of the 20th century by reconstructing the palace with a new mission, combined with a new mission. And of course, this now leads to something which is partly successful. We still have to do a lot. But a lot of people are coming, not only foreigners, also Berliners are flooding this part of Berlin in the weekends. But after 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, people are going in other parts of the city.
Okay, wow.
And as well, we try that not everybody goes to the center, the historical center of Berlin. We have wonderful museums, the Berggruen Museum, the father of Nicolas Berggruen in Charlottenburg, to bring people also there. He was the collector of Picasso, so a wonderful collection, and other parts of where our museums are in the city. So gentrification is perhaps more a problem than really overtourism. And one thing, there are apps like Going Local to go into, and then you find interesting things in other parts of Berlin. And the strong side, the last point, the strong side of Berlin is that everybody who comes and is a little bit informed knows that Kreuzberg has something to offer, Wedding has something to offer, the East, this Stalinistic architecture. There are so many things which helps us in this phenomena.
Okay. Well, overtourism is a problem in a lot of other places in the world, Irina. What can international organizations do to manage this effect? The UNESCO World Heritage List in danger certainly raises awareness. And UNESCO has drawn up a sustainable tourist program that declares these wonders belong to all, yet it wants to encourage appropriate tourism and quality experiences. Now, what role can organizations like UNESCO play in trying to achieve this?
Thank you very much for this very important question, Scott, and it has different layers. Let me just give credit to the tourist industry. We speak here about mass tourism that can infringe upon the outstanding universal value of heritage sites, but tourism has also a very positive impact on very many different aspects. It's about healing. Yesterday we were speaking about that. It's about knowledge about our humanity's diversity. And if you look at the World Heritage List, 1,199 sites, it's an open book of our diversity. And also the tourist industry. You remember when COVID struck many places in this world, tourism industry went down, there were jobs that were lost, there were revenues that were lost. So what we speak here, I think it's about sustainable tourism, as you mentioned. Actually, sustainability is the foundation of what we want to achieve in all of these areas. And what is sustainable tourism, apart from the conventional knowledge that it's economic, social, and environmental? It is about balancing the interests of the tourists, of the industry, of the local people. I think it's very important that local communities are involved, and that is why it's not just the big chains of hotels coming someplace, it is not just the big cruise ships or others, but it's really the fabric, the community, the local fabric of society that has to be supported when we speak about heritage. And just last word, because you said what intergovernmental organizations can do. Put on the list in danger, like there was here this proposal for Venice. It's the World Heritage Committee, decided not to. Today it's not just governments, it's civil society groups. I see here Snezhka, Europa Nostra, who was in the forefront also, and Hermann, who were in the forefront of not just pushing that for the sake of name and shame, but really trying to find the right balance in the interests of all this. And then climate change, tackling seriously the issue of climate change.
Okay. One thing I should mention, personally, I was at Venice at the end of COVID, and there are very few tourists around, and walking past these empty restaurants with waiters standing outside, I thought was really heartbreaking, and it's actually encouraging to see them full again and doing good business, because it's a very important element in this. What I wanted to ask is, in the 21st century, the nature of tourism has changed quite dramatically. I, like a lot of people, watch people in museums and observe people in great cities. And I want to ask, to what extent smartphones and social media, how has this altered the tourist experience? Is there a danger that it creates a sort of click and run tourism that is in some way lowering quality, if we can use that term? What are your thoughts?
Well, it depends where. For example, I think that in Venice we never make an update. I was born here in 1967, and the city still runs in the same way after 56 years. But I remember when I was a kid, the season was from June until end of September. End of September, the big hotels were closed. The restaurant, many restaurants that were closed. So we have like a season, and we have a limited millions of number of people. We have a small little airport. And now we have the third international airport. We have airlines from all over the world. We have, 25 million of tourists, but the city still runs as when I was a kid. So there is something wrong about it, even if we have all this access now to technology, but it's something like we are not able to update nowadays how to run a place like this.
Okay. Do you find it an issue, the way that tourism has changed this way, or am I just being an intellectual snob? I think I probably am, actually.
Well, there are changes in tourism, of course. Quality tourism is also a topic in Berlin, because for us, the museums and cultural institutions are really an economic factor in Berlin. This is obvious. And for us, I think it's a great help to use all these media, social media and so on, to bring the people to the interesting places. Because when you go, everything we are organizing through our smartphones, why not the museum visits, why not the city visits? It's logical that I go in and I inform myself, I get into the museum, virtual tours, and then I say, this is a museum where I want to go. But there is never a problem that, because people can have these virtual tours, they will not go to the museum. We have CDs and discs at home, and of course we go into the Philharmony. So it's well used, it's a great help, and it's so important. It gives global, worldwide visibility for our cultural institutions, that people really come. And what I talked before about gentrification, it is very important that in Berlin, not everybody goes to the world-famous museums in the center, but also to others. And it helps us a lot, really, to create also quality tourism, if it is well used and well adapted.
What about the danger of cities themselves, for various reasons, turning into a museum? This is it's a sort of catchphrase or a cliche bandied around with Venice. What do you think about that issue in Venice?
Well, I said this before. I think we have to change our mind about the perception of the museum. For me, museum is something beautiful. It's not a graveyard. It's a place where you can inspire yourself, and it's a place where everything is organized. So we can't have a city of 49,000 people and have 25 million of tourists. So. The numbers talk about it. It's not an invention.
Sure. And Irina, do you feel actually that tourists regarding a city as a museum can be a positive thing?
Yesterday I was listening to Brian Stevenson, and he made really a fascinating story. And it just happened that a month ago I was in Alabama and Georgia. I was in Montgomery, I was in Birmingham, I was in Atlanta, invited by the local tourist authorities, mind you, tourist authorities, and ICOMOS, the International Council of Museums of Sites, for those who do not know, which are the advisors for the World Heritage Committee on inscribing heritage sites. And why I was invited? Because there is the idea, the initiative of the University of Georgia to inscribe a series of sites linked to the struggle against racial discrimination under the title of Freedom Trail, which are in Selma, the Selma Bridge, in Montgomery, in Birmingham also, linked with the Martin Luther King. And it's a fascinating project which has a deep meaning. And I think that, and they want to stir interest. So it is on one side to create a bigger tourist drive to go there because of its value, because of its message, because of its educational aspect also of it. On one side, to once again to create jobs, to involve local communities once again into more of a productive kind of a work. And I thought that this is also a meaning of heritage. It is not just one building here or there, like Venice. It's intangibles. It's the message. It's all this history that is brought there. So I was just thinking that, we have indeed to look at the balances but we should not lose sight of this part of heritage protection in cities, that it is a message, it's sustainability, it's inclusion, and it's also knowledge about the others.
Okay. But destination museums can also drive visitor numbers. The Guggenheim Bilbao is an obvious example we mentioned yesterday. Now, for many Berliners and many others, the 680 million Humboldt Forum project is still a contentious project. Now, Hermann, you've written about the Humboldt Forum. It was designed to be in touch with as much of the world as possible. What did you mean by that?
Well, you may know that it's a kind of extension of the Museum Island. The Museum Island, this is the vision of the 19th century, collections from the Near East, Europe, the roots of European culture in the Near East, and now we are living in a globalized world. And the idea was to bring the ethnographical collection of Asian art into the center, to expand the Museum Island in the reconstructed former city palace, and to make the whole of it a real place of world cultures. And I think what is so important, not just to put the collections into the vitrines, into the galleries, but really, and in the Humboldt Forum, I think we are doing it quite well and still expanding it in dialogue with the cultures of origin, with societies of origin. Of course,
let's just jump in here. You've had to deal with a massive restitution issues.
Yes, this colonial issue. For us Germans, it's very new because we always thought our population, well, we have been in a very short time colonial period, which was true, but nevertheless very bloody, very cruel, and we have confront this. This is something which Europeans have in common with Africa and other parts of the world. And we are cooperating, we are doing restitutions, we do provenance research. More than a year ago, we restituted the Benin bronzes to Nigeria. And it was so good because the restitution will be and this is a model, the beginning of a common cooperation. Because for our Nigerian partners, it was always important. They wanted restitution, but they said, but of course we also want permanent loans that you can continue to show our art. We are proud of our culture. We want that it is worldwide seen. And I think this is a model how we are negotiating restitutions and also the exhibitions, creating the narratives. Brian Reynolds thought that it's so important, the narratives of the galleries, of the museums, of cities, part of the cities, to create them together and then be open to which results this cooperation will lead. Common narrative, restitutions, exchange, and there's enormous potential for us Europeans really to get a new relation with the global south, which is so important. We know that China, Russia, all are active in this part of the world, and we, the former colonial powers, we have a difficult task, and I think this can be, culture as a soft power can be very important to create a new strategy and a new being together with the global south.
Sorry, Karen.
I'm so sorry, but I'm just encouraged by what Hermann said and to congratulate Germany. I have been studying a lot the issue of restitution within colonial context, and I think Germany has one of the most progressive decision and strategy for that matter, and I have seen the Foreign Minister Baerbock being there in Benin City in Nigeria with the Foreign Minister, and I think this is an excellent example of creating this reading common history and creating this type of rapprochement. And I think this is cultural diplomacy in its best. and it should be more used also for that matter. Not confrontation, but joint reading.
I was very struck by the phrase that it's not a museum, but a place of negotiation and discussion and debate as well.
Exactly.
Isn't it? Yeah. Just a final point to stick around. There's been a lot of sociological research about experience and how for more and more people across the world, experiences are actually more important than physical possessions. And travel and tourism is a really inherent part of this. But in an age of internet-driven mass tourism, has taking a photo become the experience? And is this a problem for destination cities? Should we be concerned about levels of engagement? Is this a challenge?
Not easy. But how you can say this to people?
Quite. They're just enjoying themselves. Yeah.
I mean, let's be realistic.
Yeah. So but Hermann,
we can't teach to everyone what they can do.
But you've got a tremendously interesting and challenging intellectual project there. I'm just wondering.
I think it's up to us to give more information as possible. So to give access, this is the most important things. To give, we were talking before about it. Give access, since for example, in Italy, in the primary school, they don't have a lot of access to art. They should be more like, take the class everywhere, teach better what we have around. We are in Italy, so we should learn better what we have.
Okay. Time for questions, I think. Is there a mic available? Would anyone like to ask a question?
Good morning. I'm Cyril Carrion from South Africa, actually, as a matter of fact. So I was very intrigued by what you said, Mr. Parzinger. I was just wondering, why aren't there any is there no delegation from the Global South? I am here on my own accord, just to actually figure out what is the Western Global North perspective on the Global South. And I hear such amazing things that could complement or could teach the Global South, but I also realize that there are many things that the Global South absolutely can learn and need from the Global North. That collaboration definitely needs to grow. I myself am from South Africa, which means that Nigeria has a completely different history and thus different way of doing this, and Cape Town has a more Dutch history with South Africa. So this conversation definitely has so much potential.
Why don't we get Hermann to respond to that?
Thank you.
I somewhat expected this question, always expected when I'm talking about Global South. What is Global South? We know that better we should not use this term, but we always think, well, you know what I mean. In this sense, we are using it, but it's quite diverse. And of course, it's not only in the south, it's moving to the north and so on. But I think it's the real challenge is, and you said it also in your question, cooperating in a new sense, in a new quality. I think this is important, learning from each other. We are not the Europeans teaching the rest. We can give our experience, our knowledge, but indigenous knowledge, for example, is very important now for the galleries. We are also cooperating with communities, not only with scientists from the countries of origin, but also with communities representative. They are doing our education programs also. This is learning from each other. This is important, and really thinking it, not thinking that we are teaching the world. And this is very important for Europe. And the European Union, my last point, is developing also. They recognize that culture and heritage is very important for a new relation between Europe and the rest, let's say, and the rest of the world. And it's strategic priority, and also we all hope in 3 or 4 days there is the European election, that the result will be in a way, this is very important, everybody goes to vote, that really we can continue this policy of openness of Europe towards the rest of the world. This is so important.
Another question?
So, in prolongation of Hermann's mentioning, recalling that we are in Europe and that 350 million Europeans are invited to vote this week, we're discussing about the sustainability of tourism, and what would your messages to the new leaders of the Parliament, of the European Commission? What can Europe do also better to lead in promoting the values of sustainable and responsible tourism?
Well, maybe I could just add a couple of words. What Hermann said. Sustainability, of course, is the big issue and very much linked to climate. And Jusneška know very well that during the last COP conference in Dubai, there were very important decisions taken from that point of view. Actually, before that, in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh, for the first time, protection of heritage was mentioned, the link with climate. But in Dubai, already there is a very, I would say, good platform to move forward in terms of adaptation. For the first time, protection of heritage, both tangible and intangible, they're very much linked because it's transmission of knowledge, in transmission of social practices, it's our common heritage. There are among the 7 windows, as they said, of the final declaration for the adaptation. And also very important, you know that there were some breakthroughs in the establishment of a fund, the loss and damage fund that was promised during the Paris Climate Agreement and then launched in Dubai. For the first time also protection of heritage is recognized there, that it may be financed, some of this project may be financed by this fund. So I think it's very important opening and the network of climate and heritage played a hugely important role. That's why I say not just governments, not just intergovernmental organizations, we all are into that, and we all can contribute to finding the right solutions. But I'm much more optimistic now that for the future climate negotiations, heritage protection, tangible, intangible, will be taken on board with the very concrete decisions of sustainability, resilience, indigenous knowledge, because otherwise we will lose our common history of humanity.
Okay, another question? There's someone at the back. Right at the back. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Carry on.
Hello. I followed Mr. Jalta's advice and I really enjoyed your panel. Thank you so much for this. Well, recently many have been said about the biennalization of Venice. That's a really strange notion for me. And I believe that there was a wave of outrage after the installation of Mr. Valdés' sculptures. So I would like to hear your opinion about that notion and how dangerous can be Biennale for Venice, the city and the civilians.
How,
Okay.
sorry, how you say?
How dangerous the Biennale is for Venice, the biennalization.
Dangerous?
I mean, there's a new word, biennalization. And I believe there are civilians that are against this.
Can you take back the microphone?
Yes, I mean, there is this new word, biennalization. I cannot even say
Well,
that.
I
And
think-
there were reactions
Well, I don't know. I think
about Valdés sculptures.
Well, I think Biennale is just good for my city. I mean, I can't.
How can you explain this? I mean,
Well, it was born more than 110 years ago, and it's the old art fair, not an art fair, it's just an exhibition of contemporary art that's completely supported by the Italian state, by the way, so it's not a fair, it's not for sale. And this is something like maybe, it's not Art Basel, it's all support by public, and it's something like very beautiful from my country. For once they do something well for 110 years, so it's fantastic. And it was done at the time, and still now, because the economy of Venice 110 years ago was a disaster. Venice was a very poor city and half abandoned, so it was like created to increase again. One of the main reasons of the existence of Venice is art and beauty. So I think that nowadays is an amazing source of inspiration for everybody, and even from economical point of view, it's very good. I mean, we use in place. Look at where we are now. I mean, Nicola Berggruen decided to have this place and another one in the Giudecca. This one was for sale for 25 years and nobody wanted. And I think Nicola was attracted because of the Biennale and because of that kind of feeling of cultural things that we have in Venice. So I don't think that there is a problem of biennalization. I think it's just something very positive and apolitical, completely free, completely detached from any kind of things. So, viva Biennale.
Okay, Toto. Thank you so much. I think we've run out of time. It's such a pity. Would have been good to talk more about education and the importance of education underpinning all these issues, but hopefully it will emerge later. Okay, thank you very much, and we move on to our lightning talk.